And good morning, good Wednesday morning. I don't know if you're in the state of Indiana, but if you are, it is beautiful but cold here. But wherever you are, good Wednesday morning to you. Thank you for joining us for Switchpoint Live. And we have got the Thriving During COVID-19 presentation for you today. This has been an amazing work in progress that has come together literally in about 3 weeks, from concept to getting everyone on board to bringing you here today. So thank you so much for taking time to participate in this and to join us for it. Everyone has put in a lot of hard work, and we're really excited that you're here. A little bit about Switchpoint, just to give you some background. This was a concept idea that we're literally breaking out today in front of you. And the idea is to create a space that's immersive, that brings people in and keeps people connected, emotionally, physically connected, as we move into the future where technology continues to push us apart further and further. And if you've ever watched that, family sitting at the table next to you in the restaurant, you know what I'm talking about when people don't talk to each other anymore. They stare at their phones, or the way that we engage, just like today, is based solely in the world of technology. But as we're talking today, I'm very grateful that we have the technology. It's a dual-sided coin, and I'm glad that we're here and we're able to connect with you just like this. Now, we're in some unprecedented times. These things that are happening around us have taken us a little bit by storm, a lot by surprise, and have thrust us into a space of uncertainty. And one of the first things that we were told was social distance. Social distance yourself. Put 6 feet between you and people around you. And then social distancing became a little bit more serious as we started to realize that maybe going to the grocery store and staying 6 feet away from people wasn't as safe as we thought it was, and we didn't feel as safe and secure. And now we're in kind of a shelter at home or shelter in place mentality in some places. And we have to kind of stay here and hunker down. And it's really difficult, but it is for the greater good. There's a video that was produced by the World Health Organization that I want you to take a look at. And I think it's a great testament to get us started as to why we really need to look at this in a way of positivity and not in an overpowering or overshadowing kind of way. So take a look at this video and we'll be right back.
Throughout history, humankind has prevailed in our darkest moments, coming together to face the very thing that would extinguish our light. This is not one of those moments at all. This is a moment for pretty much the opposite. For hiding, for laying low. Napping is also good. Saving humankind by really, really not getting near it. Where playing games, staring at screens, staring at anything, all are the stuff of heroes. Every generation has its moment where individual sacrifice makes way for the good of those who will come after. A higher purpose. This one is ours. Throughout history, humankind has prevailed in our darkest moments, coming together to face the very thing that would extinguish our light. This is not one of those moments at all.
And that, I think, is probably one of the most poignant ways that I've heard this put. We're doing this for the greater good. We're here because what we do impacts others, and it impacts the environment, and ultimately it impacts our future. So if we take a look at what today's program looks like, there are several components to it. The first is letting you know a little bit more about what we're doing here with Switchpoint, the people who are behind the scenes, which you'll get an introduction to here in a little bit, and also how this will flow out. So what you can expect for the next hour or so, we have got 4 fantastic speakers. They have each put together a presentation about 15 minutes long, and we're going to navigate through those and let you just experience what they have to offer. Everything that they're talking about today is focused on helping to empower you to thrive in the future, starting today, starting right now. What I can tell you is that we have been through a lot of conversations with putting this together. And I think one of the key things is that we really need to focus on positivity and having gratitude in the moment, gratitude for the things that we do have, not not acknowledging the things that we don't have. We don't want to be Pollyannish about things, but we have to be grateful for the things that we do have in our life. And right now, I'm grateful to introduce our first speaker, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession. She brings over 30 years of, well, almost 30 years. I know she's going to get me for that one. Almost 30 years of just fantastic experience to the table. She is the founder of We Thrive Live, wethrive.live. Check that out. It's a great site. And Rebecca is going to talk to us a little bit. So without further ado, please welcome Rebecca Fleetwood Hession.
Hey y'all, I am Rebecca Fleetwood Hession, CEO of wethrive.live. So my company name is We Thrive. So I've been in this business of helping people thrive for some time now. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. Now, I want to start where I start with clients always, even before this situation that we're in now, which is the difference between striving and thriving. Because if we're honest, prior to this, many of us have just been living for far too long in strive mode. And we use the word strive as a moniker of success, but actually the word means battle and conflict. And if we're honest again, didn't much of our lives feel like a battle and conflict before this global pause? Probably. So what I don't want us to do is think we're going back to that. This is a unique opportunity to really look at what it means to thrive. So I'm going to share with you the steps that it takes to thrive. And always have been the steps that it takes to thrive. Before the sea of uncertainty, and now more important than it's ever been. Okay, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you the steps, and then we'll look at how they apply to where we are now. So if you picture it like a hill that we climb every day, because here's the deal. Every day when you wake up, your brain has one job. Your brain wants to make sure you survive and thrive. And I do this because I'm going to talk to you about it like we're climbing this hill every day. So our brain is looking for certain things along this path every single day. First thing, our brain says, okay, survival. Do we have food, water, and shelter? Okay, so first thing our brain wants to know every day. The next step on this path is psychological safety. Can I be myself? Do I know who I am? And then right above that is our unique gifts and talents, because we're all very different, all the way down to our fingerprints. God wasn't into the die-cast manufacturing of humans. We're supposed to be different. But unfortunately, striving mode had us all kind of acting like we were machines here to produce. But we're not. We're beautiful humans here to have impact. Because right above our unique gifts and talents is our need to connect. We have these unique gifts and talents that have been hardwired by God into us so that we can give them as gifts to serve another, to serve a community, a cause, or a company. And every day our brain's saying, okay, are we using our gifts? Now, our gifts aren't our jobs or our roles. So I'm a mom, I'm a consultant, but my gifts, I'll give you my top 3. I'm an optimist. You could probably tell that, right? And that serves me really well, and I use it to serve my clients and my company and causes that I care about. I am a connector. If I meet you, I will immediately tell you 2 or 3 people that I think you should know. And I can take really complex ideas and break them down into symbols and metaphors that are helpful to people. Those are my top 3 kind of unique gifts and talents in this chapter of life that I'm in. And so I am always looking for ways that I can use these gifts to serve, because that takes us up closer to thriving. Now we're in the place where when we use our gifts and talents, our brain goes, yay, you're valuable and relevant because what you have helped someone. And then ultimately at the top of this hill that our brain wants us to climb every day is this idea of meaning and purpose, where we can holistically say, okay, I know what I'm about, and I know the purpose that I'm here for in this season or this chapter of my story. And those are the steps to thriving. Okay, here's what happened. As we were doing our thing, doing our work, all of a sudden, abruptly, boom, we got knocked down the hill. So as we're using our gifts and going to work every day and doing all the things, all of a sudden, boom, we're flat on our back. Like, what just happened? And so now we're back at the bottom of this hill in survival mode. This is trauma, y'all. This is trauma. And that's okay. Here's how we can deal with it. This is how we swim in the sea of uncertainty. Now, another quick reminder. You have always, we have always, I have always had uncertainty. Far before any of this happened, our lives had a fair amount of uncertainty. You could have woke up and been on your way to work and been in a tragic accident. One of your loved ones could have been diagnosed with cancer. You could have fallen down and broken your nose. We've always had uncertainty, but we've also always had, back here in the back part of our brain, habits and a rhythm and a routine that made us feel safe and comfortable and really lulled us into a belief that we have more control than we actually have. And now we feel completely out of control. And what's happening in our brains reads this as trauma. We're laying flat on our back at the bottom of the hill like, what just happened? And so our brain's like, okay, just make sure we're okay. Do we have food? Do we have water? Do we have shelter? Are we okay? Which is why people started hoarding toilet paper, y'all. I mean, we just went into survival mode. And yet, as we're in this survival mode and we look at psychological safety, it's like looking at our lives through a funhouse mirror. Like, I'm going to the grocery store today to get strawberries wearing a mask. Like, that's not normal. And so we're distorted and we're disoriented and we're just trying to find our footing. And our feelings don't make sense because things that used to be important to us, we don't know if it's still important. But yet our hurts and our pains and our uniqueness still matter. They're still important because the deepest human need that we have is to be seen, heard, and known. So in a time when we look around and there's just what feels like mass chaos, we still want to be seen, heard, and known. And in those feelings, sometimes it feels really selfish because we're comparing ourselves to people who are dying. We're comparing ourselves to healthcare workers. We're comparing ourselves saying, we should just be okay. We should just be thankful. We should just. But here's the deal. Comparing our pain does nothing to alleviate ours. We are unique down to our fingerprints. And our pain is unique and comes from a very personal place. So it's okay to have those feelings. No guilt, no shame, no shade. You're in trauma, we're at the bottom of the hill, we're trying to get ourselves packed back up so we can start climbing back up to this place of thriving. It's okay. So, some steps that you can take. Because we're in this basic survival, food, water, and safety, never have the basics of life been more important and more evident to our ability to get back to thriving. What we eat, how much we move, and how we take care of ourselves right now matters a lot. Because that's going to give our brain the safety and security, the psychological safety to get back up on that hill. If we just, Netflix this thing out with chips and whatever else, it's going to be really hard to get back up to climbing that hill to meaning and purpose and thriving. So again, no shame, no shade. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about striving, but it is about being aware that how we fuel our brains right now is really going to help us with our emotions. So it's really, and getting the right amount of movement and getting ourselves in that place where we have good headspace. It's important more than it's ever been. The other thing that's really important is give from your place of giftedness. Because again, your brain's looking for you to have value and relevance. So once you gathered the supplies for the family and you got everybody what they need, now you're saying, I should do something. I should do something. I feel helpless. What should I do? Give from your place of uniqueness. This isn't a time where you should compare somebody's giving to somebody else's. We should never compare. So wherever you feel valuable and relevant in other aspects of your life, this is the place to do that now. So I'm a connector. I care a lot about people feeling connected. So one of the things I did, I noticed on Twitter one night that a lady had talked about how she was single and she was alone. And that broke my heart because I have my kids here with me. Even though I'm a single mom, I've got two, adult kids, 18 and 22. And I all of a sudden was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine doing this alone. So I just put a shout out and said, hey, anybody that's a single woman out doing quarantine alone, send me your address and I'll mail you a Badass Women's Council t-shirt and a little note. Simple, maybe even in some ways silly if we're trying to compare ourselves to a healthcare worker or somebody that's battling the virus. It's not silly. It means something to that woman. I mailed 12 t-shirts out last week and the notes I got back made me feel valuable and relevant, and it helped them in that moment. So whatever you're good at, do those things. A lady I was working with said, I love to do flowers, and when I was at Kroger getting my groceries, I made a deal with the flower guy, and he gave me bulk flowers for a really good price because they weren't selling much anyway. And she said, I went home and I made all kinds of arrangements and I put them on the doorsteps of the people that I know are really hurting, either healthcare workers or the elderly. And she said, it just made me feel good. So give of our giftedness. What we don't want to do right now is strive. How do I just white knuckle my way out of this? Could we just stop doing that? So striving means I'm going to go in for all the details. And this is the time to zoom out. Thriving is to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. To look at this from an opportunity to pause and say, okay, who am I? What am I about? How can I help right now? So one of the ways that is helpful is to write down what you do know. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty. Agreed. But what do you know? Number one, I've got enough food for the next couple of days. I'm safe. I have a house or apartment to live in. I have people that love me. I've got unique gifts and talents, and jot some of those down. How can I give those gifts and talents today? Those are just a few ways that you can swim in this sea of uncertainty without feeling like you're drowning. And it's okay to have days, multiple if you need them, that you're not okay. No need to be striving, thinking you're supposed to be good at this. We've never been here before. We can't even look over and compare and say, Google, how do you do COVID-19? We won't know until years into the future when we look back and we can reflect on this time in our lives. So now is the time to reflect and connect. And those basics will help you get back on that hill to thriving in whatever time that it takes for you as an individual and your family. There's no right and wrong way to do this. There's right for you and there's right for me. All right, I'm here to support you. I'd love to stay connected. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Make it a great day. Just one day. Whatever that means for you. And then wake up tomorrow and decide what that day needs. And then the next day and the next day. One day at a time. You can do this. Hey y'all, I am Rebecca Fleetwood-Hession, CEO.
All right, Rebecca, amazing to hear that. And I wanted to really hone in on something that you said, talking about this idea to be permission, to give yourself permission to be human, to actually experience those feelings, to not suppress them. You know, I once heard a psychology professor talking about, you know, what we suppress will in fact grow. And it's kind of like, you know, right now, if I look at you and I say, you know, for the next 10 seconds, don't think about a pink elephant. For the next 8 seconds, don't think about a pink elephant. For the next 5 seconds, don't think about a pink elephant. For the next 2 seconds, don't think about a pink elephant. And how many of you out there, as I was saying that, started thinking about a pink elephant? So we don't want to suppress. We want to express what's on our thoughts. Allow ourselves the permission to be human. Allow ourselves the moment to cry, to break down, and not be strong. There are so many people right now that feel like they have to live in an area, in a space of, I am, you know, Wonder Woman or Superman. I am invincible. And underneath, they don't feel so invincible. So give yourself that time. Give yourself the permission to be human. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for the message that you brought. And to carry on with how this is going to go, Rebecca and the rest of the team will be joining us around 10:10 this morning to participate in a live panel discussion with moderator Sherry Peak Davis. So we'll be seeing Rebecca again very soon. Now, in the meantime, this earbud and this place that I'm at is only somewhat real. We're in this virtual environment, which means that somewhere there is someone who is probably making all of this happen. And I have a feeling if I just go, Rick, are you there? Hello, Rick. Rick, are you there? Rick is not there. Rick has left the building.
I am here. Yes. Yes, I am. Yeah, this is Rick from Hope Training Academy. Thanks again for putting this together, Sean. Hopefully I'm coming through. Everybody can hear with my microphone. We're here in Carmel, Indiana. And really quickly, Sean and I met, and let me take this off because I'm getting a little feedback. Sean and I met, believe it or not, on Facebook when we have a Hope Training Academy, which we educate and help eradicate poverty in terms of education. So we have 3 schools, one at Lafayette Square Mall, one at Shepherd Community Center, and a new one at Martin University, where we teach IT skills for adults 18 and older who need new skills. And then after we help them get their certification in IT, Microsoft Office or QuickBooks, which is financial, we go out and help them get jobs. We feed them, we help clothe them, and everything that we do for our students is free. So we give them scholarships, and it's really rewarding, especially what happened during this pandemic. We have them coming to our schools in real time, and obviously we had to shut down our schools, so that made me scramble and create this online. So right now, I'm actually in my house here in Carmel doing these videos in our broadcast facility, and Sean and I met when I was trying to get a wireless speaker, and I bought something out of Facebook Marketplace, and we got to talking, and we got to collaborate on this, which I'm really thankful and blessed for. So we really appreciate everything all the speakers are doing and all the people in the audience. It's been great to meet all the different speakers, and we have a lot of things to share and a lot of people to help. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean, and if you bear with me for 1 sec, we will turn it back over to him.
And so you can see Rick is the guy that's back there controlling with all the magic buttons and making this what it is, so that we can give you an experience that's not just a Zoom meeting. It's not just this is a bunch of people that decided to get together to talk, but we actually wanted to try to create a production for you so that you could get involved over the next 2 hours. I've been telling people, if you don't have time to spend the entire 2 hours with us, that's okay. Leave this running in the background. Just listen to it when you can. I promise you, you're going to get some really good information. You're going to get inspired, and you're going to get motivated just by listening to what you can of this. So again, very glad to have Rick on board, Hope Training Academy. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the possibilities that they're going to use this technology for within their own adventures as well. So it's very exciting. Our next guest who will be speaking is Gerald Bush. Gerald is an influential and highly successful emotional intelligence and human resource consultant. I met Gerald about a year and a half ago, and we were doing similar work, and Gerald and I got to talking, and I was just very impressed by his ability to communicate this EQ style of learning, this emotional intelligence. And I've been doing this as well, and it was fun to just kind of sit and talk shop with Gerald for a while. Let me read you a little bit. So here's my handy dandy teleprompter. It looks like a phone, if you could see it. And he has several years of experience delivering consultative HR approaches with personal integrity, leading critical evaluations, communicating effectively across all levels of the organization, and managing innovative HR initiatives. This guy has got a lot going on. He understands what it takes to conduct critical evaluations, develop consultative business solutions, and recommends programs that align with the mission and visions of corporations. So Gerald is going to tell us a little bit more about what EQ is, what emotional intelligence is, and kind of the components that make up emotional intelligence. So Gerald, take it away.
So thanks for joining me this morning. I want to spend a little time with you this morning talking about practicing emotional intelligence during COVID-19, keys to sharing your emotions. So we've all experienced a time where emotions have gotten in the way of how we think. But what we don't understand is that emotions are critical to the foundation of how we think, because those emotions give us signal, those emotions give us data to help us understand those things. Also, our brain requires us, our emotions, to weigh in, to really make decisions to determine our future. According to T.K. Coleman, our feelings are not there to be cast out or conquered. They're there to be engaged and expressed with imagination and intelligence. So when we think about that, what are emotions? According to Webster, emotions are disturbances. Emotions are excitement. Emotions are conscious actions that change us physically, psychologically, and it changes who we are. Emotions are anger and joy and sadness. So for me, in the last 30 days, I've been completely locked in. And for me, with my family, it's my wife and I and my 2 sons. I'm an extrovert, and my emotions have been all over the place. I've had anger, I've had joy, I've had love, I've had sadness, and even dealt with grief. So during this time of uncertainty, it's important that we understand what emotions are and how to deal with our emotions. So what emotions are you feeling now? One of my favorite movies is Inside Out. And I like this movie because one of the characters in the movie, we could see all of her emotions. So if we could see your emotions right now, what emotions would we see? Will we see joy? Will we see anger? Will we see disgust? Will we see sadness? What will we really see? So it's important that you're communicating and sharing the emotions that you want everyone around you to see. Now, with the emotions that you're sharing, whether it's anger or joy or sadness, it's critical that you're able to identify that emotion, because if you're able to identify that emotion, then that creates the foundation. So, like I said, the last 31 days for me has been inside. So I go for a walk every day at 5:30. I'm seeking out people to engage with. I'm seeking out neighbors to wave to. I go to the grocery store. I'm seeking someone to express energy or express excitement for, because that's how I communicate. I'm an extrovert and I need people. I need to be able to express my emotions at all times. So for you, what are you doing to express your emotions? What are you doing to communicate your emotions with the people that you're coming in contact with? Whether it's an animal in your house, whether it's your wife or your child, or even on a Zoom call, what emotions are you communicating? So for me, emotions are not to be left behind. Emotions are not to be suppressed. Emotions are to be communicated and shared. And when we're able to communicate and share our emotions, it helps ourselves and everyone around us. So according to David Caruso, it's important to understand that emotional intelligence is not the opposite of intelligence. It's not a triumph of heart over head. It's a unique insertion of both. So when we talk about our emotions, it's important that we're not just talking about our emotions from what our head say, but we also have to consider, what are we really feeling? What is our heart saying? So when we talk about emotional intelligence, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to use our emotions to make informed, conscious, effective decisions. According to 6 Seconds, emotional intelligence is being smarter with our feelings. And we need that data to be able to figure out what's going on and why it's going on. According to Myers and Solavi, who are psychologists, emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive emotions, to assess emotions, and generate emotion so as to assist in thought, understanding emotions so as to promote emotional and intellectual growth. So when we're talking about emotional intelligence, it's, are we understanding, are we perceiving those emotions? Are we using those emotions to understand our thoughts and the thoughts around us? Are we using those emotions to grow? And if we're doing that consistently, then we're able to manage our environment and communicate in a way that everyone around us understand. Also, according to Daniel Goleman, who is the psychologist who popularized emotional intelligence, he said there's 5 key elements to emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. So when you think about all of those things, are you self-aware? Are you self-regulating? Are you showing empathy to yourself and those around you? And are you using and practicing your social skills every day to make sure that the people that you're coming in contact with are truly understand what you're saying or what you're feeling? So how do we put emotional intelligence into action? Because every day our emotions are important, and if we're able to use emotional intelligence to help us manage our emotions, then that would help us to be successful, not just during this time of uncertainty, but also once we get back into normalcy. So the first thing we have to do is to name the emotion. So naming the emotion is truly being able to name, what am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I joyous? Am I sad? Am I angry? What emotions am I really feeling? And it's not just about naming the emotions that we're feeling, but are we able to name the emotions of the people that we're coming in contact with? What are they feeling? Are they angry? Are they showing joy? Are they showing compassion? What emotions are they sharing? According to Potik's Wheel of Emotion, Potik communicates that we have 8 core emotions. And after those 8 core emotions, those emotions expand. So when we look at anger, anger has frustration and rage. So at its core, anger can be expressed in many different ways. So it's important when you're talking to someone to understand, are they frustrated? Are they annoyed? Are they angry? Or they have rage? Now, according to Webster, there are over 300 emotion words. So think about that. If there's 300 emotion words, how many emotions are you going through each day? How many emotions are the person that you're coming in contact with each day? How many emotions are they going through? Studies show us that women use about 180 emotions, where men use about 140. So we all go through a lot of different emotions. So if we're able to name those emotions, then that starts the foundation to help us to be able to communicate what we're feeling. The next thing we have to do, we have to listen. So we have to listen to ourselves. We have to listen to the people that are around us, the people that we're in contact with every day. So according to Webster, listening is to pay attention. Listening is to discover. Listening is to give consideration, to give thoughtful attention. So when we listen, how are you listening? So for me, I like to use the iceberg to talk about listening. So when we look at an iceberg, 1/10 of an iceberg is above water. The rest of the iceberg is below. So when we talk about listening, are you just listening to the words? Are you listening for thoughts? Are you listening for feelings? Are you listening to just regurgitate what someone is saying? Are you listening to just respond? When we talk about level 1 listening, it's just listening to respond. It's not listening with compassion or listening to understand. When we talk about level 3 listening, we're not just listening with our eyes, but now we're listening with our ears. And when we get to level 5 listening, we're listening with our heart, we're listening with our eyes, and we're listening with our ears, because we truly want to understand what someone is communicating us. We truly want to be able to feel what the person is saying. So listen to what the people around you are saying. Listen to yourself. Are you communicating to yourself that you're angry, but you're not listening? Are people around you communicating and you're not able to do it because you're distracted? So get to level 5 listening to ensure that you're able to understand the people around you. The next thing we want to do is respond with empathy. So responding with empathy is important because empathy is about experiencing. We're not talking about sympathy. Sympathy is understanding. I want you to focus on experiencing. Am I truly able to experience what the person is sharing? Am I truly able to walk in their shoes? Not focus on how I'm feeling or how it makes me feel. Not focus on understanding it, but truly focus on, can I truly experience their anger? Can I truly experience their joy or their sadness? So we can get to a point where we're being empathetic and we're responding with empathy. That helps us to be able to help the people that we are around, but more importantly, it helps us.
A few weeks ago, my father passed away. And for me, I was not being empathetic with myself. I was so focused on everything around me. I was so focused on trying to get through the moment that I was not empathetic towards myself. I was not truly focused on what I was feeling or what I was experiencing. So it's important that we practice empathy, and we practice empathy, again, not just for ourselves, but for all of those around us. The next thing we have to do is to remain curious. So why is remaining curious important? So curiosity is to investigate, to learn, to seek to understand. And for me, one of the things that I enjoyed when my 2 sons was growing up, one of the things that we watched often was Curious George. And for me with Curious George always wanted an adventure to understand, an adventure to learn, an adventure with play for curiosity. So for you, as you're going through this process, how curious are you? Are you asking the right questions? Are you asking questions to get answers instead of asking questions to get what you want? It's important that we're curious. So a couple weeks ago, I was having a conversation with my younger son, and he's extremely curious. If I ask him a question, he has 5 questions coming back at me. And what I've learned with him is that I have to stop and listen. I have to stop
and really try and understand why are those questions important to him. And once I'm able to understand why those questions are important to him, at that point, I can get to a point of clearly understanding what he's saying and why those questions are important to him. So I'm not asking questions to get to what I want. I'm not being curious to get to my answer, but I'm being curious so that I can help him get to his answer. So we talked about naming your emotions. So it's important to name your emotions and to be able to name the emotions of the people that you're coming in contact with, because that's the foundation of being able to move forward. The next thing we have to do is listen. We talked about level 1 listening. Are we listening with our eyes? Or level 5 listening, where we're listening with our eyes, we're listening with our ears, and we're listening with our heart, and we're listening to understand. Also, are you responding with empathy? Are you trying to experience, or are you trying to understand? And it's important at all times that we understand what's going on, not understand what's going on, but to experience what's going on. And then the last thing, we have to remain curious. Are you nosy? Are you investigating? Are you learning so that you can help the people that you're coming in contact with and that you can help yourself? So as I close, I want to leave you with this quote. When our emotional health is in a bad state, so is our level of self-esteem. We have to slow down and deal with what's troubling us so that we can enjoy the simple joys of being happy and at peace with ourselves. That's a quote by Jeff Scott. So thank you for taking the time to spend time with me this morning. And remember, our emotions are not there to be suppressed or hidden, but if we use emotional intelligence, we can communicate effectively in all aspects of our life. For more information, or if you have questions, please visit me at gbkbconsulting.com. Thank you. So thanks for joining me this morning. I want to spend a little time this morning talking about practicing emotional intelligence.
All right, thanks, Gerald. And that kind of gives you a really good overview of emotional intelligence and how we need to become aware of our empathy. And I think, I was just asked by someone yesterday, what is the key to emotional intelligence? And I'll tell you right now, it's self-awareness. And one of the ways that you can really hone in on your self-awareness is through mindfulness meditation. Now, here's the interest. Meditation is becoming more and more popular in mainstream culture right now. But a lot of people do it and don't even realize it. So let me give you an example of one way that you can do mindful meditation that is probably not at all what you would have imagined. Take your favorite song on the radio. The next time that you have the chance, I just said radio, I just dated myself. A lot of us listen to streaming music. So find your favorite song on your iTunes. And when that song starts, I want you to focus in on one instrument in particular. And whatever that instrument is, I want you to focus in on it very, very intently. And what I really mean by that is if you're listening, let's say you're listening to the voice, the person singing. I don't want you to just hear the lyrics. I want you to pay attention to the nuances in their voice. You hear any subtle cracks in their voice, or certain things that they do with the vibrato of their voice. Or maybe you're listening to the drums. I'm a drummer, so I tend to listen to drums first. Listen to all of the rhythms that are created within areas of the song and try and follow each beat, each drum, each cymbal throughout the song. You can do it with guitar, you can do it with bass, you can do it with saxophone. Listen to the nuances, because what that nuance is that focused piece of your attention. It's becoming mindful of one thing and really focusing in on it. And if you can do that for 3 or 4 minutes of your average pop song, then you've just practiced mindfulness meditation. And it's following that through. And then when we actually get into mindfulness meditation, we start to do that focus on our breathing or on some type of visual cue. It's the same focus, just a different media to get it there. So practice mindfulness meditation. And the reason I say that is because as you do that, your focus becomes better and better. And then once you kind of hone in on that focus, you'll realize that you have the ability to become self-aware much easier. And that skill will begin to grow within you. You'll start catching yourself as you're having these emotions that Gerald was talking about. You'll start catching yourself at the very beginning when they first start to come on. You'll start to recognize, oh my gosh, my heart's starting to pound. What's going on inside of me? I'm feeling anxiety. You'll notice it like that. And then you can start to go through the process that Gerald was talking about, labeling that emotion. What emotion am I experiencing right now? How do I manage that emotion? What's the appropriate response for that emotion? So there's a little bit of insight into some mindfulness meditation, and I'd love to talk to you guys more about that in a bit. Now, as we move forward, I want to really just open up a little bit and give a big sigh of, we're in this, and now it's starting to flow really good. And I've been really impressed by the things that I've been seeing that people are doing to stay connected. They're like doing some very creative things, even though we can't physically be together. So take a look at this next video and just some of the creative things I found recently that people are doing to stay connected. So the first thing I want you to look at is this series of pictures. These were uploaded by a friend of mine on Facebook. And what I found fascinating was her granddaughter had left this doll at her house the last time that she saw her, right before we went into this shelter-in-place thing. And so Grandma started putting the doll in all of these various locations, and every single day she posts at least one, sometimes multiple pictures of this doll in different locations. We've also been seeing a lot of things like birthdays and people celebrating birthdays by going to the window of their loved one and staying outside of the window, but going to the window of their loved one and sharing a birthday message, maybe lighting candles and singing through the window. The last thing that I'd like to share with you is from Italy, and this is one of the more creative things I've seen. Let's all join for a drink.
Vai! Avviciniamo il tutto!
Dai, pure lui sta brindando!
Va benissimo!
Salute!
A voi tutti!
Salute! Salute! Allora, mettetevi anche voi al centro. Michele, vedi?
Vai! Avviciniamo il tutto!
Dai, pure lui sta brindando!
Va benissimo!
Salute!
A voi tutti!
So the first thing I want you to look at is this series of pictures. These were uploaded by a friend of mine on Facebook. And what I found fascinating was her granddaughter had... All right, so to all of you out there, I raise a toast, social distance style. Can you see my glass? My glass, that is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life, Rick. I like that. It's like, here it is, there it goes. I know, right? All right, so we're back, and I raise a toast to all of you, social distance style. That's how we do it nowadays, because that's what we need to do, right? And we've talked about that. So a little bit more about what I would like to really focus in on today is making sure that what you're getting out of this is the skill set that you need to really just propel yourself forward and get into that positive mindset. And the first thing I will tell you, put a smile on that face, because the smile helps. It just does. Body language and the way we express ourselves, our body is keyed in to know that that smile means that we feel good. It releases those endorphins. Put your shoulders up a little bit. If you've been kind of sad and depressed around the house, shoulders back. Just improve that posture. Get your body language in gear. Put a smile on your face, and let's take all this great information and move forward with it. All right, our next speaker is Jean Poole, and Jean is the owner of E-Cubed Performance, and she is an inspirational style keynote speaker. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jean for several years. We've worked on and off, just kind of in the same circles of people throughout the years. She has more than 20 years of training, marketing, B2B consulting, and US and global team management experience. She has led, Jean has been helping individuals and teams break through barriers and make sustainable transformations for over 2 decades. E-Cubed's performance training aligns training theory with the understanding of how DNA impacts performance. In other words, you're Jean Poole. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jean Poole.
Good morning. My name is Jean Poole, and I am the owner of EQ Performance. We are a training, development, and leadership development company. As a former marketing, sales, operations, training, and external consultant for several of the largest companies around the world, I have led teams that reported directly to me and teams in a matrix managed organization where they were not my direct reports, but I was responsible for the delivery of some significant outcomes. In addition to that, I was the owner of an insurance company most recently. So I match the theory of training with actual application of leading teams. In the agency, I led teams that were multi-generational, multicultural, and with multi-diverse learning styles. So we share not what we've read, not what we've heard, but what we know. And today, I am pleased to be able to bring to you a presentation I created called Changing Lanes on a Busy Highway. We've only got 15 minutes here together, so I want to get us going here and just share with you that this is a metaphor for if you've ever been on a busy highway with a lot of cars and no lanes available and traffic is back to back. Sometimes you've probably felt that way in your career. So it's kind of changing lanes on a busy highway, but it's about looking at your career where you are, getting installed and moving on. So with that, let's just get going. Now I'm going to toggle back and forth because there are a couple of really good slides that I want you to see. So just taking a look at this one. All right, that's me. So as this says, changing lanes, if you are unsure where you're going and how you will get there, you can be sure that you will be unsure of where you'll end up and how you got there. Before you get into a mess like this, or anytime you get into your car, you want to have your GPS already set. You want to know about the roadblocks you might run into. You want to know about the construction. You want to know the best time to get on the road. That's the same thing when it comes to your career. So maybe you've achieved some success by staying in the lane that you've been in, but now you see there are so many talented people out there, you might get squeezed out of the funnel. Or the next step in the funnel may be too full, there's no place for you to go. Or you just simply are no longer passionate about the lane you're in or the career that you've chosen. So the objective here today is to help you assess where you are on this busy highway called a career path. So we're going to look at value proposition. Am I seeking comfort or challenge? How do I get started or unstuck? Do I have a clear vision? Again, this is going to be beneficial to leaders as well as employees, because as leaders, we're responsible for having the right people in the right seat. And if we don't, it's our fault because in most cases we chose them. As the employee, you need to understand that if you think you're in a bad space, your leadership probably thinks the same thing. So now would be a good time to actually look at doing something different. While maybe with this pandemic that's going on, maybe things have gotten a little slower for you, or you don't have the traffic driving into work or the traffic driving home. So that gives you a couple of hours in your day to really focus on a few different things. So I'm going to introduce you to some concepts. So get a pen and paper. First is the trans-theoretical model of change. See this here? Trans-theoretical model of change, and it goes through the stages of change, beginning with pre-contemplation. In denial, you don't even want to deal with anything. Wait a minute, now you're in contemplation. Wait a minute, you need to do something because you're starting to realize, well, this isn't a good situation for me. This happens to be a scenario on money. If you're in the stock market like I am, you have maybe been a little crazy with how things are going, but stay the course, don't make any changes. At any rate, preparation. Now you are starting to do some things. This is where you start to take matters into your own hands. See the gray bar here? Taking some action, here's where the magic happens. Life is good, you got maintenance mode. And then once you get that mastered, it's time to move on to something else. Look this up, Google it, because we don't have a lot of time to focus on it. The trans-theoretical model of behavior change. Because if you want to change lanes or get out of that career, you really need to think about how to make that happen. Here's another model I want to introduce you to. the unconscious competence model. Perhaps you've heard of this in your careers. Unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know. Conscious incompetence. Now you know there's a problem. Think about your own career path. Think about something, not necessarily career or anything that you might need to look at changing. You move from conscious incompetence to conscious competence, the third bar here. So I know something, but I have to think about it. I know there's something wrong, but now I have to think about how to make the change or how to keep things going. And then you move into the skilled stage. That was on that trans-theoretical model. You're up there, you're in maintenance. Now you know something, you don't really have to think about it. So as you move through these stages, this is a function of how you're performing over a period of time, from not even knowing how bad it is to, wow, I don't even have to think about this particular thing when it comes to whatever that situation might be. This is applicable. Now, we said we're going to talk about your value proposition. On the first slide, it mentions stability versus reliability. If we go back to those vehicles, the Mercedes was the car that was trying to change lanes. That's a car that people get for reliability and luxury. A Suburban, they're going to get it for stability. What is your brand identity or your brand image? Have you taken a personality type lately? Like one of those assessments like Myers-Briggs, the DISC, or maybe the Enneagram, to see where you are. If you haven't done one in 10 years, even if the last one you did was 10 years ago, you need to do another one, because the circumstances that you are functioning in change how you function. Looking at the second bullet point, are you critical of the mission or critical to the mission? If you're critical to the mission, that's a great place to be. If you're critical of the mission, you need to move on and think about looking at something different. Maybe you're in the wrong lane and nothing seems to work for you. Your leadership probably feels the same way. Nothing's working for them that you're doing. So think about making a move. Are you engaged, satisfied, or not engaged? This is 30% of the workforce is just putting in their time. We call those satisfied, not engaged. And then now this is information from the Gallup poll. If you've been around a while, you've heard about Gallup. Are you engaged? You're very productive, loyal to the mission, and about 55% of the workforce is in this category. Are you a cave dweller? Unhappy and poisoning others? You really need to move. 16% of the people are in this space. CAVE stands for consistently against virtually everything. You absolutely know this is not a good spot for you. And that's why we're talking about, don't just sit in a bad place, because it's not going to get better. Now's the time to think about doing something that really suits you. Okay, you've heard about the comfort zone. So the comfort zone is a great place to be. It's warm and cozy, but no growth happens there. So you need to move out of the comfort zone into the learning zone. It's that second circle where you're dealing with challenges, acquiring new skills, and you're extending the comfort zone. And then you move into the growth zone, where, again, on that trans-theoretical model of change, as you went up the axis, you got to a place of where now you were comfortable there. Now it's time to do something else. So find your purpose, live your dreams, set new goals. So you've heard of the comfort zone. Now you can Google this image, but we all know about the fear zone. I failed to mention that, but clearly to come out of that comfort zone, the first place you're going to be is the fear zone, and that's a scary place. But as you build those habits, then you're moving on to the learning zone. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen, it says failure is an option. Think of the word fail as first attempt in learning. If you stay in that comfort zone, you're never going to grow. As you move into the fear zone, yeah, you're probably going to fail a couple of times, but that's how you grow. So failure is an option as long as you pick yourself up and keep moving on. Here's another example of the comfort, being comfortable and moving out of the comfort zone. But here's actually a reason why people get stuck and they stay in that comfort zone. It's they're overwhelmed by maybe the options that they want to consider. Instead of really paring them down, they're all over the board. And this leads to analysis paralysis, or paralysis by analysis. And what this text says is, well, we finally got through all the market research required to launch our product, but we're too old. So you don't want to overthink something. Being a critical thinker is great because you critically assess where you need to go, but overthinking, you're just going to just keep rehashing and rehashing. And you've heard people say they're getting ready to get ready. This is what this refers to. So you don't want to be held back by paralysis and analysis. Here's another slide I want you to really take a look at. So talking about changing lanes, what keeps us from moving is the denial, the fear. This keeps you back in that comfort zone. So this is over a period of time, that denial and the fear, anger, resistance, acceptance, they get smaller and to a lesser degree over a period of time. See, time is here on the x-axis. Then as you start to accept that it's time to make some changes, you become open, you start testing some things, you start relearning. So you'll see how the trans-theoretical model of change, the stages of change, the unconscious incompetence model of how you go from not really acknowledging that it's a problem to, wow, it's a problem, I fixed it, and now I need to move on to the next thing. And then looking at this change model. So there's so many things that can help you make those changes and get unstuck and not be on that busy highway behind a slow moving car where you can't go anywhere, or in a slow career, a slow industry where you're not gonna go anywhere. Remember, this is a metaphor for changing lanes on a busy highway. So another thing that holds people back is this thing that I call 3D stress: discouragement, doubt, and distraction. You can read here: discouragement, a disheartened state. We all have probably felt this given the trying times that we're living in. Distraction, a diversion, doubt. One of my colleagues is talking about uncertainty and hesitancy, but that's basically where you start doubting. If you look at the text here, it says, think of a time when you experience any one of these emotions. If you're not careful, or if you weren't careful, you could cycle through all of them and then end up with another defeat. So this is one of the things that slows people down and keeps them from making the necessary changes that they need to do. And this is my proprietary program, 3D Stress. This is just a poem that I learned when I was pledging a sorority, and this is a snippet, but the poem is called Don't Quit. And this phrase reads, when life gets rough, as it sometimes will, and the road you're traveling seems all uphill, when funds are low and debts are high, and you want to laugh, but all you can do is cry, when cares are pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. It's okay to change the path, but don't quit on your goals. Don't quit on getting to the place where you really want to be. Now, you may stop doing the particular thing, but do something else that gets you closer to where you need to be. And if you look at the bottom of the slide here, it says, the only limitation to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the presence of fear, but yet the will to go on. You got to get unstuck and get moving. Now, speaking of distractions, take a look at this guy. Are we talking about really distracted on the phone? And don't be in a heated argument, because now you're not really focusing on the road. He's got one of these fancy watches, probably an Apple Watch, got his GPS up that he's paying attention to. If he charted his course before he left, then a little lady on the GPS is going to tell him where he's going. But all of this and then looking out the rearview mirror, this is a serious distraction that's going to lead to an accident. Don't you get distracted when it comes to your career and miss the blind spots are the things you're not paying enough attention to. The roadblocks are the people who are in your way or situations that are in your way. But you have to be clear, you have to be paying attention to make sure to see those things. Let's move on, we're wrapping up here. Looking at having clear direction and goals. You really need to think, is the change worth the risk? Explore the lane options. Look at something that's less risky for you. No, don't jump and find your parachute. Know where the landings are, what the options are for landing, then you might jump and find a parachute, but you better have some options. Now, that's my personal philosophy. Evaluate which lane is better for you. Should you stay or should you switch? The grass isn't always greener, but the way you'll know this is to do your research. Now, here's something interesting. There's something called a side hustle, the side gig. 40% of Americans have a side hustle. This needs to be something that you can do outside of work. It should not be a conflict of interest with your work. It should not be something that competes with your time at work, but something you can do maybe in the evenings. You may find you're better at it than you are at the job you're in, and that may be something you'll transition to. But I repeat, do not do something that is a conflict of interest for your moneymaker, and do not do anything that competes with your interests for work. You know, a lot of people teach, their adjunct professors, they teach after work. So do something that doesn't impede your performance at work. But the side hustle is a great option for changing lanes. Just ask all those network marketing people who are making quite a bit of money in different areas. Have a clear vision. Your clear vision has to include who you are, where you want to go, and how you're going to get there. Do the research. Use your resources. But sadly, the things that can function as your resource can also be your blind spot. Sometimes people are not for you, they're against you quietly. So you really need to understand who can help you and who will help you, because saboteurs are those blind spots. It's the same blind spot that you would have in a vehicle. You've got blind spots at work that you need to become more conscious of. Sadly, many people make changes as a result of fear or regret. They're afraid of what's going to happen, so they make a move too quick. They regret something or not doing something, and they make a move. Those are the wrong times to change. Let your change be driven by clear focus, clear direction, and deliberate actions. So 2020 vision, focus, attitude, goals, and success. It's not too late. It's only April. Though we don't know how much time we have with the craziness of our world, take advantage of today, because all you have is the present. Thank you for spending some time with me. I'm Jean Poole, EQ Performance. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a website. It's under construction right now. So if you have a message for me, just send me a message. Just look me up on LinkedIn and you can find me. Make it a great life, everybody.
I guess I should stop this tomfoolery, as my grandmother would have said. I'm back. We're back. We'll move this prop microphone that doesn't exist if I do that. All of this is to say that while this conference is serious, while the topic's serious, it's okay to have fun. It's okay to enjoy yourself and just have fun. We'll just drop it down there. Nobody needs that. Just a microphone, right? All right. So as we get into the last presenter before the panel discussion, I want you to pay attention to the box below your screen there, the window that you're watching this on. There is a chat box. And if you have any questions for our panel, please feel free to put them in that chat. Sherry will be looking at that later. Our next guest is Mr. Jason Barnaby. Jason is the fire starter of the group. And as the chief fire starter for Fire Starters Inc., he really is one of those people that gets you going and gets you fired up for what is that passion inside. Jason accomplishes this through a combination of individual executive coaching and facilitating a 5-week interactive virtual development experience for leadership teams called 30 Days to Blaze. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jason Barnaby.
Hey everybody, Jason Barnaby, Chief Firestarter of Firestarters Incorporated, and I want to welcome you to this virtual conference. I am so glad that you've decided to join us today because, as you know, the world is dealing with all kinds of fear and anxiety and uncertainty and kids at home, and suddenly everything has been flipped upside down. So how do we deal? How do we learn to thrive in this time of COVID-19? Well, at Firestarters Incorporated, our mission is to ignite hope and to torch fear. And I can't imagine that that's ever been more appropriate than right now. And so I want to talk to you today about some ways that you can start doing this in a very practical way today. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about how the brain works. And some of you are probably already familiar with this brain science and what happens when some stressful thing like COVID-19, which is on the far end of stressful things in our spectrum, is what happens when we're dealing with that kind of stress. Well, what happens is this part of our brain, the amygdala, takes over and our body starts producing this steroid called cortisol to fight the stress that's going on. And in high stress situations, lots of cortisol gets dumped into our bodies. Well, here's the problem with cortisol. One of them is, though it helps with the stress, it also weakens our immune system, because partly we're taking all of our energy to deal with all of the stress and the anxiety and the fear and the worry that we're feeling. And so we get into, instead of like thinking critically and thinking and being our best selves, we're in this self-preservation mode. And you've seen this. We've seen shelves and shelves and shelves all over the country of people who are hoarding toilet paper, thermometers, masks, and gloves. We've gone into a scarcity mindset, and the abundance mindset has disappeared by and large, at least at the beginning. Why? Because we're freaking out. Our amygdala is saying flight, fight, or freeze. What do? I don't know, but I'm going to use all the energy that I have just to make sure that I survive this thing. Well, as you've also seen, I'm sure, in the news, and maybe you've even experienced, we're not our best selves when this is happening. So what do? How do we then come out of that place where we're freaked out and don't know what to do, and we're using our energy in the wrong way, and start using it in a good way? Well, like I told you, at Firestarters Incorporated, we look at igniting hope and torching fear. And I want to give you 2 tools today that are going to do exactly that. And I want to leave you with a challenge for this time to maybe reframe it. The first thing to get us out of this crazy idea of like, oh, the world is ending, is to just start to be grateful. Can you start thinking of something that you can be grateful for? And that ties into this first tool that I want to give you. It's this idea called word in, word out. It's something that I use with my clients every time I do a coaching engagement. It's something that I use for myself. My wife and I do this every year. We've been doing it for a number of years. Many of you may have seen that one little word or word of the year. Well, we take that a step further and call that word in and word out. So what does that look like? It looks like this. You choose a word that you want to bring in. What do you want more of in your life? What do you want more of as you focus on things? Because there's a quote that says, what we focus on increases. Think about that for a second. What we focus on increases. And conversely, what we don't focus on decreases. So if we're spending less time watching the news and freaking out, likely we're going to spend less time freaking out and spending our energy and our time in that place, right? So what can we do to bring a word in? What's a word in that you can focus on right now? And maybe that word in is gratitude. Maybe you start with just being grateful. When you start the day, what is one thing that you can be grateful for that you've started this day with? And I want you to think about that and write it down, whether it's in your phone or in a journal. And for some of you, you may have to work really hard. You're like, I don't really know what to be grateful for, Jason. I'm struggling. Think hard. And what I can tell you as somebody who's done this myself is the more you do this, the easier it gets. It's a step-by-step process. So start writing that down as you start your day and as you end your day, something to be grateful for. I want to tell you a little story about how a word in played out in my life that I think is also applicable to this crisis we're going through. About 5 years ago, I decided to run my first, last, and only full marathon. I'd run several half marathons. I enjoyed running. I'm like, hey, I can do a full marathon. What's the big deal? It's just double the distance, right? I can do that. No big deal. So I started training. I had a goal that I wanted to hit. I wanted to get to run this 26 miles in under 4 hours. Some people told me I was crazy. Some people said, hey, go for it. Well, I had chosen that I was going to run this marathon I had chosen the word endurance as my word in for the year before I had even chosen to go run the marathon. And so, but it worked out that it was a pretty appropriate word for me as I'm running. Well, so I trained, I'm on track, I'm running with a buddy, it's going really well, gets to race day, and unfortunately my running friends didn't really tell me about this wall that you hit. Now, if you've never run a marathon, maybe you don't know about this. If you have, I'm sure you do, but around mile 19, mile 20, you literally, like, not actually run into a wall, but there is this wall, like your body is like, what are you doing? It is time to stop this insanity. And so I got to this place around mile 20 and literally my thighs were spasming. I was at one point standing on the side of the race course, pounding on my thighs, trying to get them to stop spasming so I could keep running. Sounds kind of silly now that I'm telling this story, but I had this goal in mind and this thing that I wanted to do. So I'm running and I ran about another half mile and I got to the place, I'm arguing with myself in my head. I'm like, you know what? I quit. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. As soon as I get down to the end of this corner and I turn, there's a place I can go off the race course. I'm done. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm out. Get down to that corner. I turn and of course, you know where this is going. I turn and there is a huge banner right on that corner for a company named what? You guessed it, endurance. Here that word "in" shows up. What we focus on increases, and here is this word. And I saw that word and I'm like, well, clearly I can't quit running now. And so I finished. And as I got about 100 yards from the finish line and I saw the timer, I realized that I still had an opportunity to finish my race and hit my goal. And unbeknownst to me, my family was right there. I didn't see them, but they saw me, and my middle son jumped out of the crowd and he's running alongside of me going, "You can do it, Dad. You can do it. You can finish. Get it. You got it." And he ran with me almost to the finish line. And I finished in 3 hours and 57 minutes. I made my goal. I endured. I'd focused on that word "in" and focused on what I wanted to do. Y'all, we are running a marathon with this COVID-19 thing. I know that many of us were hoping that it would be over in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. But as I listen to the news, it keeps getting pushed out. They keep talking about how we're going to shelter at home for a while. So what is a word "in" that you can bring in to help with this marathon, to help with your endurance? What's a word "in" that you can bring in, that you can focus on? And maybe you do this with your whole family. Maybe you have one individually and you have one for your family. Maybe that word "out" needs to be complaining. It's a great time to learn to be thankful for the things that we have. So choose your word "in", but then also choose your word "out". Now, I mentioned before that mission of Firestarters Incorporated is to ignite hope and to torch fear. And I want to tell you how I've turned that into a practical activity. Jack Canfield has a quote that says, everything that you want is on the other side of fear. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. Say that with me. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. Now I want to make it more personal. I want you to put "I" instead of "you" and say that with me. Everything I want is on the other side of fear. And I believe that. I'm living that as I've started my own business, as I'm going through this COVID crisis and trying to figure out, how is this going to work? How am I going to get through this? Everything I want is on the other side of fear. So how does that work practically? How does that work logistically? How can I do this practice to help me realize that? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take out a clean sheet of paper. This is going to take a little bit of time. So just write this down. Call it torch. That's the exercise, okay? What you're going to do, and I recommend setting a timer. You set a timer for the 5 minutes, and you just do a brain dump of all the things that are getting you messed up in the head, that you're afraid of, that you're anxious about, that you're fearful about. When I wrote my first book, Igniting the Firestarter Within, I couldn't come up with the right word that I wanted for this head trash thing, this automatic negative thought. So I made up my own word. I've been an English teacher for 20 years. Why can't I make up a word? So I did, and it went in the book. And it's called What If Abouts. That's what I made to talk about this head trash. Because what happens is we say, well, what about this? And what about that? Well, if this happens, what about this? And what about that? And well, if that happens, what about this? And before we know it, we have gone down this crazy rabbit hole of all these things that could go wrong, and nothing's even happened yet. Guess what? The Cortisol starts getting produced again. We start going into a scarcity mindset. We're not thinking about abundance. We go into self-preservation mode. None of that is healthy. Write down all of these things that you're afraid of. What are the problems? What are the issues? What are the fears, the stressors, the worries? Write them all down. And then, to the point of Jack Canfield's quote that everything we want is on the other side of fear, I want you to flip that piece of paper over. I want you to reset the timer for another 5 minutes. And I want you to write and think about all the things that could go right. If these fears were gone, what's the other side of fear look like? Think about that for a second. If the fear is gone, what does the other side of that look like? We don't spend much time there, do we? We don't. And so what I want you to do is focus on what that would look like and write those things out. And now here's where it comes to the practical side. And I want to say this very slowly and very particularly with proper fire safety in mind. If you're going to do this, do it over a sink with running water, do it on a grill, do it on a fire pit, do it with a bucket of water around so that you can do it, or a fire extinguisher. But what you're going to do is you're going to take that piece of paper that you've written all the fears and on the other side all of the hope, and you're going to light that thing on fire. You're going to torch it. And can I just tell you, this is part of my 30 Days to Blaze program. It's day 15 of the 30 Days to Blaze. It's my favorite day because there is something that happens when we physically light these fears on fire. We are lighting them to basically say, you have no more control over me. And we are igniting the hope on the other side of those things. If nothing else, we are giving equal time to the fear and the hope. And so often what we do is we just focus on the things that make us afraid. This is an opportunity for us to focus on both sides of the equation, to ignite hope and to torch fear. Now, you may be one of those people who says, Jason, there is no way in the world I'm lighting anything on fire. Great, here's an option for you. Take that piece of paper and tear it into the tiniest little pieces. And when you get it into those pieces, tear it into smaller pieces. Turn it into confetti the size of rice. Turn it into little bitty pieces of paper. And here's another suggestion. You might want to do this with your whole family. This is a great thing to do with kids. Our kids are going through this too. My daughter broke down the other night and she said, it's been however many days it's been since I've seen my friends and I miss them. And am I ever going to see them again? And I'm lonely. This is a time to write that down and do that as a family exercise. If you have a fire pit, use this to start your fire to make s'mores for a family night. How about that? Ignite hope and torch fear in that torching exercise. I told you I was going to leave you also with a challenge, and here's my challenge to you. So many of us are looking at this time of this COVID-19, staying at home, dealing with the stuff that we're dealing with, and saying, I just have to go through this. I just have to get through it. I just have to just endure it. I just have to go through the motions and get to the other side. Here's my challenge. Instead of just going through this crisis, could you challenge yourself to grow through this crisis? Maybe you're going to eat healthier. Maybe you're going to sleep better. Maybe you're going to start that exercise routine that you wanted to. Maybe you're going to finish that book that's been on your nightstand. Maybe you're going to take that course. If you've lost your job, this is a great opportunity for you to say, what do I really want? There's opportunity. It's a choice. It's a conscious choice to look at this as something that you have to go through or that you have to grow through. My hope is that you will ignite hope, you will torch fear, and that you will grow through this. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that you will continue to thrive during this COVID-19 crisis. Hey everybody, Jason Barnaby, Chief Firestarter of Firestarter.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the live panel discussion for the Thriving During COVID-19 times that we're experiencing right now. We have our panel of guests, which you have already heard from. The speakers there are Gerald Bush, Jean Poole, Jason Barnaby, and Rebecca Fleetwood Hessian. And I am Sherry Peak Davis, and I am your moderator for this panel discussion. So I just want to remind everyone that we have a chat box, and we encourage you to ask your questions of either of the panelists, and we will do our best to get to answering them. So let's get started with our discussion. So, guys, here we are all in this together. And that's one thing I am so want to stress with this, is that you are not alone. We all are going through this COVID-19 quarantine thing together as a group, as a family, as a nation. And with that, even myself, panelists, I thought, this isn't going to last too long, just having no clue about how long this thing really was going to go on. And so here we see ourselves just about 30 days into this quarantine, and all kind of emotions are starting to be evoked, from having to stay at home, maybe staying with your family, not being able to do the regular things that you normally would do. So Gerald, I want to ask you, you spoke about emotional intelligence. Emotions are all over the place, but depending on where our emotions are, that could very well determine how we go through this process. So could you share a little bit more about how important being aware of your emotions are once again? And also, I know sometimes people aren't comfortable expressing those emotions, or maybe don't even know how. So what tips can you give them, even just walking through that process?
Sure. I think, Sherry, that's one of the tougher questions right now, because we're all struggling with, what am I really feeling? And I think it's important that we're able to identify that, what am I really feeling? Am I angry? Am I happy? Am I sad? Because if we're able to identify that, then that starts the foundation of being able to communicate. So if I'm angry, it's okay to be angry, right? So if I'm angry, how do I communicate? Hey, I'm not in a good mood now. The other thing that we have to deal with our emotions is that we have to find avenues to relieve those emotions, right? I know that for me, I'm in a house with 4 people, and I'm used to having my free time. So what can I do? I'll go in the basement and work out. I'll take a few minutes in a corner and listen to music. I'll take a few minutes and go for a jog. So what is that thing that you can do personally that will give you the relief that you need? Because for me, everybody in my house is different. So what works for me may not work for someone. So we know that our brain is stimulated by different things. So each person, I can give you 100 different things to do, but if you yourself cannot identify with that, then it serves you no purpose. So I challenge each of you to think about, what is that one thing that I need to do? And don't be afraid to communicate that to the people around you. If it's to your spouse, to say, hey, I need 30 minutes to be able to step out. If it's to, someone else, hey, I need 15 minutes. Can you give me 15 minutes to just give myself some alone time? And I think that's what we have to do in this moment, because we're all used to our drive time in work and out of work that we use to relieve. And so whatever that is, you have to find that time in this space to still be able to get that alone time.
That alone time is going to be very important. So being able to recognize those emotions and express them. Rebecca, you talked about there's a difference between striving and thriving. So we just don't want to go through this process any kind of way, and prayerfully not coming out the same way that we went into it. So can you go a little bit deeper into that striving as opposed to thriving? Because that's what we want to help people elevate their emotions, so they can get to the place where they're going through this process and they're growing and they're coming out more emotionally stable and prayerfully, better in the things that we want to improve in our lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It plays directly off what Gerald was saying about it being very personal about your emotions. The word striving means battle and conflict, and it's about some external measure of success or achievement. And you don't win at this thing, right? This is very personal for each one of us. It's very different for each one of us. And so the worst thing that we could do would be try to control it. We have to feel our way through it. And I think this is a beautiful outcome of a terrible situation, to be able to get more in touch with our feelings, because thriving is still about growing, and it's about prospering, and it's about flourishing. It's not just that we're just waiting this thing out, but we're feeling our way through it and being more in tune with our own emotions and the emotions of those in our house and the teams that we work on. I know my kids are adults, 18 and 22. They're here with me. They're very different, and they're experiencing this very different. And so the worst thing I could do is say, okay, here's how we're going to do sheltering, this is the plan, and start looking at other families and the way that they're doing it and have expectations that that's what's right for us. You know, my daughter didn't leave her room for the first 3 days. She's an extrovert. This was devastating. My son's an introvert. It didn't hit him till like 3 days ago. It's just very different for all of us, and it's the perfect time. I mean, all of our authenticity is showing, all right? We even know each other's like natural hair color now. Like, it's all out there. Let's just embrace it and feel it.
It is all out there. I know I found myself, you know, I'm introverted as well. And through watching the news and having conversations, because we can't be around people on the phone, I found myself that the things that I was saying, Jason, directly impacted my emotions. And so, Jason, in your video, you talked about, in a sense, that word in and that word out, and how powerful that can be just in our daily journey walking through this COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah, you know, I actually sent a screenshot to Rebecca today when I was listening to her presentation this morning, because I started this journaling and being grateful. And, you know, I find some people who talk about, like, it's really hard for me to find something to be grateful for. It's hard for me to find a win, but I find that when we really do dig in and do that, like I said in the video, what we focus on increases. There is a difference. And one of my mantras that I wrote down today in my journal, and I didn't know what Rebecca was going to say, but I said, I'm thriving and not striving. And the way that we talk to ourselves is so important. And I tell people often, you wouldn't talk to a friend the way that you talk to yourself. Why do you talk to yourself the way that you talk to yourself? And the focus, especially now, like, you know, I can relate to the extroverts. I'm an extreme extrovert. So not having that personal connection with people, I can also get in my head really quickly. And the things that I'm telling myself that are going on up here, people have forgotten about me. This isn't going to, I mean, it can go from light to dark really, really quickly. And what I'm putting in my brain and what I'm telling myself is incredibly important. And part of what I'm doing to keep myself in check is journaling those things. And so that I have things to look at, and it's coming out of my head and going onto paper.
I love that, because, you know, all we can do really right now is a lot of talking. And so what we say is going to be really important. And as we go through these days of this journey, through this process, Jean, you talked about changing lanes, and it was more so about careers, but I was thinking about that stages of change. You know, when we're thinking about moving from that state of striving to thriving, those same principles apply just even in our mindset as well. So can you speak a little bit about changing lanes, and not just career-wise? We'll talk a little bit more about that, because I know a lot of people are thinking about, where am I now and where do I want to be and how I'm going to get there. But just that whole process in the mind, as far as going from the pre-contemplation to the contemplation, that process, and changing our mindset that we do want to be able to thrive throughout this process.
Yes, Sherry. Well, thank you. And as everyone has said, it starts with the inner you, or I like to say, you need to make sure that the inner me is not the inner me, because it can. Like Jason just said, with the self-talk, you can talk yourself into something or out of something. When it comes to changing lanes, I chose careers because I know a lot of people are concerned about their jobs and their work and what that means, because that's their livelihood. So I thought now is a great time to reset. Take advantage of this time, as Gerald said and everyone else said. Take advantage of this time to think about who you are, where you want to be, and how you'll get there. And yes, Sherry, it doesn't just apply to your career, it applies to your entire life. So when you think about that trans-theoretical model of change, from pre-contemplation, you don't even want to deal with it. It may come up in your brain, but you don't want to do anything. You actually have to move through those stages, and nobody can move you through. You have to move through yourself. So you go from being in denial, and I shared several graphics that kind of model the same thing, because it starts with an idea. It starts with wanting to do something. As we all know, no one can want something more than you want it yourself. So pre-contemplation, you may still be in denial. Then you move to contemplation. Well, maybe I do need to make a change. And as far as that, on a busy highway, so much goes on in our lives that we don't slow down to pay attention to really what's going on. We miss the roadblocks, we miss the signs to do something different. So you move on to the preparation stage, and they are stages. You go from one to the other. What's key about that theoretical model of change is that it's a cycle. It's a slippery slope. You can go back, and all of us know who've tried to make a change, you can slide back, but you just need to keep sliding forward.
I love that. And it sounds like the common theme is it's going to begin with us. If we want to move through this process from a place where we're just striving to thriving, we're going to have to do some inner work. We're going to have to do some inner evaluations. And I like, as we're thinking about transitioning our mind frame from being stagnant to thriving, I love that as we're thinking about even changing lanes, that could be with our relationships, that could be, with our career, what have you. I like, Rebecca, that you pointed out where the gifting and the talents come into all of this, because if we have a chance to change, we will want to change more into the purpose-filled person we were designed to be. And so can you speak a little bit more about gifts and talents and how people can tap into that as they're going through this process as a way to even help them cope with what's going on and even build upon that into the future person that they see themselves being?
Yeah, absolutely. Each of us, we're hardwired with unique gifts and talents, and those grow and evolve over time, but some of them we've had since we were children, right? And what's interesting, and I'm noticing this with many of my friends and with myself and my kids, what we really crave in this time is usually something that is a part of our giftedness, because that feels good when we do those things. So my daughter loves art, and so I noticed that she's taking stuff off the walls of her room and flipping it over and creating new things. Like, it just naturally bubbled up, and paying attention to that, but also thinking back and saying, what have I always loved about my role or my life? And being really careful in this time not to feel guilty about the things that you're good at. Because I notice that people are doing that striving comparison thing where they think, I'd love to do more of what I'm good at, but it just seems trite or insignificant in the midst of what's going on in the world. And nothing could be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs what we've got in a unique way. And the best way that we can tell our brains that we're okay is to do those things we're good at. I think in my talk, I used the example of, sending out Badass Women's Council t-shirts to women that were doing this alone. And there's all kinds of examples through my clients and my friends of just, I want to do something, but I don't know what. And then once they really dig deep to say, oh, that's what I can do, that's my thing, don't tell yourself that it's insignificant, because someone needs it.
And I like that, sometimes we do play down our gifts and our talents, but when you think about when you're really operating in something that you enjoy doing, that agrees with you, that you love to do, Gerald, talk about the emotional elevation that comes with that.
Sure. I think for me, it's, we talk about the importance of empathy. I think with everything that we're doing, I appreciate what Rebecca said, because, we have to show ourselves empathy, right? If we're able to show ourselves empathy in this moment, because we're all different. We all approach things differently. We all deal with things differently. So empathy is one of those things where we have to be intentional about being empathetic. So the other piece is, for me, I'm an extrovert, maybe not as an extreme extrovert as Jason, but I'm still an extrovert nonetheless. And for me, I crave attention. I crave to be out and about. So for me, being locked into my office, I have a great office, but I'm going stir crazy. So my emotions are bouncing off the wall. I think some of them are hitting me every now and then. So for me, those emotions, I have to manage them, right? I can't suppress them and say, hey, go away. I have to learn, how do I manage those things? How do I manage those moments when I'm angry because I can't go and do what I want to do? How do I manage those emotions when I am just totally just bouncing off the wall? So what I've learned to do is to say, okay, what emotions am I feeling? And as I'm able to name those, I can say, okay, why? So why am I angry right now?
Why am I sad right now? And so when I start to ask myself those questions and identify why those emotions are happening or why those emotions are taking place, then I can start to step back and do something with them, right? And now that I can step back and do something with them, then I can start to control those emotions and manage them in a way where they don't impact everybody else. So I think for us, emotions are a part of who we are. We can't suppress them. When you start to try and suppress your emotions, I think that's when we get in trouble. So we have to allow our emotions to flourish, and we have to manage them. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, it goes back to how do I manage those emotions? And if I'm able to manage those in a way that I'm able to communicate those, then that helps everybody around me because, I've been married for 17 years now. And if I allow my emotions to just go awry, that would not create harmony in my house. So I have to make sure that when I'm angry, I find a way to use an outlet so that does not impact my wife or my children. Or when my 17-year-old is upset now because he's worked the last 10 months and there's no high school baseball. So he was a mess for a couple of weeks. And now he's finally said, okay, you know what? What's the blessing in that? So he's managing those emotions in a way now where he's saying, what do I do differently to manage those emotions and turn them into something positive so that I'm not critical of myself? So back to the empathy part, right? So in those emotions, how am I communicating to myself? And I think we've echoed this a couple of times. What we say to ourselves impacts what comes out. So we have to be very empathetic, to ourselves and really understand what are we experiencing in this moment and how do we manage those to be successful.
And managing I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can I jump in there? I'd like to comment on what Rebecca said about being hardwired and marry that or align that with what Gerald just said about managing your emotions and emotional intelligence. As Gerald shared with us, emotional intelligence is about self-awareness and self-regulation. As Rebecca said, we're hardwired. As you said, Sherry, you're an introvert, but nobody would know that to interact with you. There is such a thing as an extroverted introvert, which means you have rewired your genetic code. You have done something to alter your gene activity. And that is what Gene Pool's company is all about, looking at the gene pool. So that was my comment.
Okay, great. Yes, I always say my career has forced me to be an extrovert, but it works for me at times. And sometimes I love my introvertedness as well.
My wife calls that being a high functioning introvert.
High functioning introvert. Okay. So be it. That's what I am. So, and in this place, I find myself even, the first few days, I'm like, oh, great. I get to, as an introvert. Oh, great. Like your son. Oh, great. I don't have a problem with it. But here, as we're going on 30 days, I'm like, well, wait a minute, Sherry, we might be having a problem with it. So I am a client of this virtual conference as well. But I was thinking, even myself, as we're talking about managing our emotions, getting those out, Jason, and fear. That's probably one that may forever be with some people. But if we want to get through this, you mentioned in your video that everything that we want is on the other side of fear. And you mentioned a process of brain dumping. Can you talk a little bit more about that, how people could use that as a tool to, first of all, identify those emotions that they might be having, where they are coinciding with, and then how that process can help them face that and move past that?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. So I wrote a book last year called Igniting the Fire Starter Within. I've been an English teacher off and on for 20 plus years of my life. And I was looking for a word that really captured the idea of head trash or automatic negative thoughts. And I couldn't find the word. And so I thought, well, you know what? I have a master's degree in teaching English as a foreign language. I've been teaching English. I'll just make up a word. I'm entitled, right? So I did. I made up a word. Part of my goal during COVID-19 is to get that word on Wikipedia, and that word is what if abouts. And I came to that word because so often what we do in situations like this, and believe me when I say this, I'm talking to myself first. What if my business doesn't make it through this? What if the clients who said that they're going to pick me up when this is over don't? And that's the beginning. That's like, right, you just start chipping away. And what I found is that opens, like we talked about slippery slopes today, that is a slippery slope, because that just, that what if goes to the next. Well, if that happens, what about this? And what about that? And if that happens, what about this? And before we know it, we have gone down this crazy rabbit hole that's terrifying, of things that likely will never happen. But we've spent a ton of energy, a ton of brain space doing all those things. So one of the things I recommend, and it's based on that quote by Jack Canfield, that everything you want is on the other side of fear, and just get it out of your head. And even if you don't, like I said in the video, even if you don't set that thing on fire, which I do think is a really, obviously, proper fire safety in place. But, some people are like, well, my dad was a firefighter. Okay, tear it up into little bits of like the size of rice, right? You don't have to catch it on fire, but getting it out. And then what I tell people to do is set a timer. So allow yourself the 5 minutes to talk about all the things you're terrified about. 5 minutes, literally set a timer on your phone. When the timer goes off, if you need more time, the goal is to get it out. When you're done, flip the paper, set a timer for the exact same amount of time, and spend the exact same amount of time thinking about how things are going to be if all that stuff doesn't happen. What happens if it goes right? What happens if I come out of this thing better than I was before? What happens if more clients pick me up because of the attitude of gratitude and the service that I did and the things that I'm doing? What happens that way? And at least, and I tell people this is it's like a scale, at least then the scale is even, right? Because so often what we do is we just spend all this time over here where the negative stuff is. Let's at least make it even. And as we get into the we've talked a lot today about developing habits. As we develop that habit, then what happens is we start to go the other way. Because one of the things I say a lot, and I believe it in the core of who I am, is fear is a liar. And I hate fear because I've seen the effects of it in my own life. I've seen it in the affect my clients. I've seen it in my tribe. It is a powerful thing. But what I've also realized is those what if abouts, as consistent and as relentless as they are, they're also not very creative. And so once we realize that it's just the same thing playing over and over, and if you're not going to burn it, at least a question I think that you can say back to it is, so what, right? I had a job before this whole thing came. I'll find a job after, right? Like it's going to be okay. I'm not suddenly unemployable, right? Like I may not be doing the thing that I was going to do. I believe that I will be, but then I'll go find something else. So what? We'll figure it out when we get there.
I like that. So what? Well, I was the one you was writing about in that what if and abouts thing, because I had to have a plan on top of a plan on top of a plan. And I never got to work in my plan because I was always planning. And now I realize that was because of the fear. And I know a lot of fear that has set in with people right now is their income, their livelihood, their ability to be able to provide for their family. And even in conversations that I've been having, I've been hearing people talk about their money maker, how they make their money now and how they want to make it in the future, Jean. And so that conversation that is driving the force of career change, it's not only coming from fear, but I think it's also coming from wanting more and having that space in their schedule to be able to maybe plan for something different. So on the busy highway of changing that you talked about in your video, talk a little bit about what you think the market will be looking for after COVID-19. So we're not just talking about what we're dealing with now. We're coming out of this and we're going to open the economy back up. Do you foresee the needs of the economy to be the same? Do you see growth in some areas versus another? Or how would you advise those who are looking to make a career change, like you shared in your video?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Just speaking on fear, in one of the images, it showed the comfort zone going from comfort to the fear zone, as Jason said. That's a scary place, but you have to step out there before any learning can happen. And then everything else starts to happen. Now, I'm glad you asked the question about what the economy and the workforce is going to look like. My whole point of this presentation is understand, everybody, This gives your employer the opportunity to assess the role you were performing, the role that they had you performing, and whether you are the ideal person for that. This is a great time for people to do a cleaning, because now there's a forced change to look at how business is being done. I'm a former insurance agent. A lot of my colleagues are now looking at all the people that were sitting in their offices to see if that was really the way to go. A lot of companies are now reevaluating the operation because they've been forced to. Prior to this forced reset, people were just about the business of getting the business done. So what are people going to be looking for when we come out of this? They're definitely going to be looking for productive people, highly productive people who can make a contribution to their organization. So many organizations have suffered with the losses. When they come out of this, they're going to need to be moving at light speed. So I'm not, Gerald is our HR person, he can speak to that, but just as someone who's was in corporate America for a long time and in a lot of different roles and working with a lot of different companies, now I know that leaders of today are really going to be looking for strong people who are committed, who can make a commitment. No more being just that I'm just getting by, putting in my time. You need to bring it. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. And I'd like to hear the other panelists as well, share as well. So Gerald, being in HR, what are your thoughts about what does the market look like after COVID-19?
I mean, I think ultimately there's still a lot of uncertainty, right? I mean, I do agree with Jean that I think the way that we do business now and the way that we do business on the other side is going to be different, because I think a lot of companies have had to be a lot more agile in reference to what they're doing and how they're providing service. So what I would just challenge people to do during this time is, what are you doing to pour into yourself? What are you doing to grow yourself? Because I think on the other side, it's those are the ones out there who are pouring into themselves, the ones who are finding creative ways to develop themselves are going to be the ones at an advantage, because I do think there's going to be some changes in the workforce. What those are going to look like will depend on the company. I do think, companies are using this opportunity as a way to figure out, can we do something smarter? Can we do something more efficient? Can we learn from, people working at home and getting away from brick and mortar, right? Because if you think about most companies, it's brick and mortar. So those companies are going to say, how can we cut costs? And we've been successful in this time period. Can we sustain it? So, I mean, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think the people who are investing in themselves are going to be the ones that are ahead of the game on the other side.
Jason, Rebecca, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. On one hand, as an employee, you do want to take a look at your own situation and say, okay, how can I contribute in the best way possible given the scenario? And I think leaders are looking for those that have been willing and able to adapt and shift and know themselves well enough to self-manage and self-lead in this process. I think that skill in and of itself will be a standout, maybe for the first time in a way that it always should have. But another aspect of this is important is you as an employee, you're looking at how your leader handled this, how your company handled this. And our most authentic selves come out under pressure. And so you may have seen some things in your leader and in your company that you're shaking your head saying, nope, this is not where I want to be. And I encourage you to listen to that very loud voice right now and start to take really close inventory of your gifts, talents, and abilities. Do what you need to do to say, where do I want to be in the future, and not allow yourself to be a hostage of a bad organization.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah,
thoughts, Jason?
I would echo so much of what everybody said. And one of the things I said in the video was just a challenge again to everybody, for you to grow through this, not to just go through this. Because if you're in going through this mentality, you're missing an opportunity. That's first. The other is, as an employee, are you helping your employer navigate what I'm calling the new now? I don't believe that I have a friend who's in the PPE business, the protective gear business, and he's like, this is not new normal. A global pandemic is not new normal. This is not the way things are going to be. And so new normal is where we will get to eventually, but we're in new now, and new now changes on a daily basis with the folks that I'm talking to. The state passes a new policy, federal government passes a new policy. Today you had a training department, tomorrow you've laid off all of those people. That's new now. So how are we navigating that? And I think if you can be an employee who can help your employer be creative and come to the table with solutions, being proactive and not reactive, because a lot of people went into reactive mode. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And waiting for their bosses and for their leaders to act. If you can come along and say, here's a way we can do this faster, better. I'm a huge culture person. I mean, what's happening to company culture right now? And if we're not being intentional about it, culture is going to be built during this time, whether intentionally or non-intentionally. And so how do we get creative? How do you say, now that we're in this space, we didn't have this job before, but we need this job now, and I can do it, and here's why. And maybe you create. The last 3 jobs I had in the corporate world were jobs that I created myself by saying, there's a need over there. And I wrote the job description and went and asked for the job. Mm-hmm. So if you see something, don't sit around and think, well, why would they think that my idea is a good one? Why wouldn't they? Worst they can say is no, but they might say yes.
That's great. And what about for those entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs? How would you speak to them in these times? Any one of you?
I think, since I'll echo Jason's thought about find a need and fill it. This is a time to serve from your place of gifts and understanding and interests. And, that's God hardwired us to do that. And this my faith has grown more in this season than it probably ever has. And I'll be 54 tomorrow, y'all. So it's important. It's important for us to recognize that there is something that we're here to serve doing, and not to get so discouraged with the money that we forget that the real deal of being an entrepreneur is to serve.
That's a great thought. So as we're rounding up our time here together, I'd like to give each one of you an opportunity to leave a final thought with our audience today, and including any tips or resource that you want to share, and primarily your contact information about how they could reach out to you after this panel discussion is over.
I'll start.
Sure.
My mantra is, when it comes to making a change, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, change will occur. When it's so difficult to stay over in that place where you've been staying in that comfort zone forever, when it gets painful over there, then you'll make the change. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. That is how I want to leave this presentation, getting entrepreneurs to think about where they are and where they want to go and how to get there. And people can reach me at Jean Poole. My email is jean@ecubedperformance.com. My company is eCubed Performance. Just look me up on Google or on LinkedIn. You can find me.
Thank you. Okay, our other panelists, final thoughts and how people can contact you.
I'll go. So I think I said this in my presentation. We've never been here before, so we don't know how to do this. The only thing we can do is honor our own feelings, as we've all shared before. So the only universal best response is to be kind to ourselves and others, and look for a way to serve in that space of kindness. You can reach me. LinkedIn, I'm pretty active. I write a lot of articles and do a lot of stuff there. Rebecca Fleetwood Hessian is a great way to connect. And I also have a podcast called the Badass Women's Council that I'd love for you to
recommend
as well.
Thank you, Rebecca.
So for me, hashtag emotions matter, because at the end of the day, our emotions are the foundation of success or failure. So the way that we feed those emotions determine our outcome. So it's important that as we're going through this season, that our emotions are in the forefront of what we do and what we say. And we have to learn to be empathetic towards ourselves and everyone that we come in contact with. So for me, you can find me at gbkbconsulting.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm actively posting there as well.
Thank you, Joe. And Jason.
All right. So thanks again to Sean and all of you. It's humbling to be with such insightful people. So thank you all for the opportunity. The last piece that I'd like to put out there is I think that we all have a job within ourselves and within our tribes to ignite hope and to torch fear. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is by giving each other grace and space. And grace, what I mean by grace is courteous goodwill. So how can we give that to ourselves, and how can we give that to other people? As Rebecca just said, nobody's been here before. Nobody has this all figured out. If you think you have this, if you think you're the only one, you are wrong. None of us do. We're all figuring out how to swim the lanes and change lanes today. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do a lot on LinkedIn. My email is jason@firestarters with an S, firestarterstribe.com. My website is firestarterstribe.com, and you can find me on Instagram at firestarterstribe. Would love to have you join the tribe. And thanks again for the opportunity.
And I'd like to thank each of our panelists today for sharing their gifts and their talents and their time with us to walk us through what it looks like to thrive during this COVID-19 crisis. And if I could leave a message with everyone, I just want to let everyone know that you are not alone, that there are people, there are resources, there are tools, there are strategies that you can use to help move you through this process so that you are not just going, but you're growing as well. And so until later, friends, we thank you all for tuning in. My name is Sherry Peak Davis. I have been your moderator today. Thank you for joining us. Please connect with our panelists. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Sean, who is with SwitchPoint, and he's going to close us out of our virtual seminar. Thank you.
Great job today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Greatly appreciate everybody's participation in this, and you as well for tuning in and being a part of this. It's you that makes this possible, and it's you that we are doing this for. A couple of things. First of all, if you have a breakout session scheduled with Jason, then you have an email in your inbox that will give you the link to his Zoom meeting. You've got 30 minutes. That will start at 11:30. So go take a potty break. I'm sure we all need it. And get on over there to his Zoom meeting. The second thing I want to tell you about is our next upcoming live broadcast here at SwitchPoint. This is beginning our faith series. And this topic will be called Church Without Walls, a Faith Reboot in 2020. And this is taking a look at how everything has changed in the past month or two for houses of worship, for faith communities, and in our own personal faith. So it's going to be a 4-person panel discussion that will be moderated by Nancy Lafferty of Entry Point Faith Community. And finally, if you take a look at the top of your screen there, you will see the logos of all of our presenters today. Some of those are clickable, so you can go right to their website if they have a website or if we had access to that. So feel free. But again, thanking Firestarters, We Thrive Live, GBKB Consulting, Hope Training Academy, and Rick for all of his hard behind the scenes work. Make sure you click on that, check out what they're doing. It is impressive. PMG, Peak Media Group, EQ Performance, the SwitchPoint Academy channel right here, and Saxis Leadership Development. Until we meet again, my friends, my name is Sean Neal. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you to our panel members, and we'll see you next time.